Okay, starting on page 13. Um, let's see. So turn it every day and rub the pickle in, which will make it ready for the table in 3 or 4 days. If it is desired to be very much corned, wrap it in a well-floured cloth, having rubbed it previously with salt. The latter method will corn fresh beef fit for table the day it comes in, but it must be put into the pot when the water boils. If the weather permits, meat eats much better for hanging 2 or 3 days before it be salted. The water in which meat has boiled makes an excellent soup for the poor. When vegetables, oatmeal, or peas are added and should not be cleared from the fat. Roast beef bones or shank bones of ham make fine peas soup, and should be boiled with the peas the day before eaten, that the fat may be removed. The mistress of the house will find many great advantages in visiting her larder daily, before she orders her bill of fare. She will see what things require dressing and thereby guard against their being spoiled. Many articles may be redressed in a different form from that in which they were first served, and improve the appearance of the table without increasing expense. Many dishes require to be made of dressed meat or fowls. Directions for several are hereafter given. In every sort of provisions, the best of the kind goes farthest, cutting out most advantageously, and affording most nourishment. Round of beef, fillet of veal, and leg of mutton bear a higher price, but having more solid meat deserve the preference. It is worth notice, however, that those joints which are inferior may be dressed as palatably, and being cheaper, ought to be bought in turn, and when weighed with the prime pieces, the price of the latter is reduced. In loins of meat, the long pipe which runs by the bone should be taken out, being apt to taint, as likewise the kernels of beef. Rumps and H-bones, A-Y-T-C-H, bones of beef, are often bruised by the blows the drovers give, and that part always taints. Avoid purchasing such. The shank bones of mutton should be saved, and after soaking and brushing, may be added to give richness to gravies or soups, and they are particularly nourishing for the sick. The feet of pork make various good dishes, and should be cut off before the legs be cured. Observe the same of the ears. Calves' tongues, salted, make a more useful dish than when dressed with the brains, which may be served without. Some people like neat's tongues, cured with the root, in which case they look much larger. But should the contrary be approved, the root must be cut off close to the gullet, next to the tongue, but without taking away the fat under the tongue. The root must be soaked in salt and water and extremely well cleansed before it be dressed, as hereafter directed, and the tongue laid in salt for a day and night before pickled. Great attention is requisite in salting meat, and in the country where great quantities are cured, it is of still more importance. Beef and pork should be well sprinkled and a few hours after hung to drain, before it be rubbed with the preserving salts, which mode, by cleansing the meat from the blood, tends to keep it from tasting strong. It should be turned daily, and if wanted, soon rubbed. A salting tub or lead may be used, and a cover should fit close. Those who use a good deal of salt meat will find it answer well to boil up the pickle, skim, and when cold, pour it over meat that has been sprinkled and drained. Salt is so greatly increased in price from the heavy duties as to require additional care, and the brine ought not to be thrown away, as is the practice of some after once using. In some families, great loss is sustained by the spoiling of meat. The best mode to keep that which is to be eaten unsalted is, as before directed, to examine it well, wipe it daily, and pound some charcoal and throw over it. If meat is brought from a distance in warm weather, the butcher should be charged to cover it close, and bring it early in the morning, but even then, if it be kept on the road while he serves the customers who are nearest to him, it will probably be fly blown. This is most frequent in the country. Mutton will keep long by washing with vinegar and peppering the broad end of the leg. If any damp appears, wipe it immediately. If rubbed with salt lightly, it will not eat the worse. Boiled in seawater is by some much admired. Game is often brought in when not likely to keep a day, in the cook's apprehension, yet may be preserved 2 or 3 days if wanted by the following method. If birds, woodcocks and snipes excepted, which must not be drawn, draw them, pick and take out the crop, wash them in 2 or 3 waters, and rub them with a little salt. Have ready a large saucepan of boiling water, and plunge them in one by one. Boil each 5 minutes, moving it that the water may go through them. When all are finished, hang them by the heads in a cold place. When drained, pepper the inside and necks. When to be roasted, wash to take off the pepper. The most delicate birds, given grouse, may be kept this way if not putrid. Birds that live by suction, etc., bear being high, it is probable that the heat might cause them to taint more, as a free passage for the scalding water could not be obtained. Hares ought not to be paunched in the field, as they keep longer and eat much better without, but that is seldom in the cook's power to guard against. She should take out the liver and heart, and parboil the former to keep for stuffing. Wipe the inside every day, quite dry, put a bunch of parsley or some pepper or both. Thus it will keep long, especially if the seasoning be rubbed early on the inside to prevent any mustiness of taste, which often is communicated to the stuffing by this omission, and want of extreme nicety in washing it in water and vinegar before it be dressed, while the outside has been preserved fresh by the skin. If old, a hare should be kept as long as possible, except for soup or jugging, and after soaking in vinegar be well larded. Freshwater fish has often a muddy taste. To take off which, soak it in strong salt and water, or, if of a size to bear it, give it a scald in the same, after extreme good cleaning and washing, the latter for carp or eels. Turbot will hang 3 or 4 days, if lightly rubbed with salt, and be in quite as great perfection as the first day. Fish may sometimes be bought reasonably by taking more than can be dressed at once, when recourse may be had to pickling, potting, or frying to keep for stewing a succeeding day. When thunder or hot weather causes beer to turn sour, half or a whole teaspoonful of salt of wormwood should be put into a jug, and let the beer be drawn in it as small a time as possible before it be drank. If the subject of servants be thought ill-timed in a book upon family arrangement, it must be by those who do not recollect that the regularity and good management of the heads will be insufficient if not seconded by those who are to execute orders. It behooves every person to be extremely careful who they take into their employ, to be very minute in investigating the character they receive, and equally cautious to be scrupulously just in giving one to others. Were this attended to, many bad people would be incapacitated from doing mischief by abusing the trust reposed in them, and it may be fairly asserted that the robbery or waste, which is but a milder epithet of an unfaithful servant, will be laid to the charge of the master or mistress, who, knowing such faults in him, or even having only well-grounded suspicions, is led by entreaty or false pity to slide him into another place. To refuse countenance to the evil is to encourage the good servant. Such as are honest, frugal, and attentive to their duties should be liberally rewarded, and such discrimination would encourage merit and inspire servants with zeal to acquit themselves with fidelity. On the other side, it may be proper to observe that a retributive justice usually marks persons in that station sooner or later, even in this world. Those who are extravagant and idle in their servitude are ill prepared for the industry and sobriety on which their own future welfare much depends. Their faults and the attendant punishment come home when they have families of their own, and sometimes much sooner. They will see their wickedness or folly in the conduct of their offspring, whom they must not expect to be better than the examples that are set them. It was the observation of a sensible woman that she could always read the fate of her servants when they married from her. Those who had been faithful and industrious in her service continued their good habits in their own families and became respectable members of the community. Those who had been unfaithful servants never were successful, and not unfrequently were reduced to the parish. The manner of carving is not only a very essential knowledge in point of doing the honors of the table with grace, but makes a great difference in the family consumption. And though in large companies a lady is so much assisted as to make the art of less consequence, Yet she should not fail to acquaint herself with an attainment of which she must daily feel the want. Some people haggle meat so as not to be able to help 6 times from a large tongue or a piece of beef. It is to be observed that a thin, sharp carving knife, and with a very little strength to the management of it, will cut deep, thin slices, cause the joint to look neatly, and leave sufficient for a second helping, instead of that disgusting appearance which is sometimes observable. Habit alone can make people carve, or do the honors of a table well. For those who have not had practice, there are very good directions in a little book of Trustlers. In the following, and indeed all other receipts, or maybe recipes, though the quantities may be as accurately set down as possible, yet much must be left to the discretion of the person who uses them. The different taste of people requires more or less of the flavor of spices, garlic, butter, etc., which can never be directed by general rules. And if the cook has not a good taste and attention to that of her employers, not all the ingredients with which nature or art can furnish her will give an exquisite relish to her dishes. The proper articles should be at hand, and she must proportion them until the true zest be obtained. In the next video, Lord willing, will be the section on fish.